Welcome to A Fistful of Lenses, the home of real-world lens reviews. In this episode, we were taking a closer look at the Minolta MDW Roco 28mm f2.8 lens. We'll be travelling from Loch Ness in the north of Scotland down to the Glamorgan Heritage Coast in South Wales, and a few other places along the way. So let's get out there in the real world and put this lens through its paces. For the technically minded of you out there, the lens optical formula is 7 elements in 7 groups. It has 6 aperture blades and accepts 55mm filters. It weighs in at just 180 grams. The lens came to market in 1977. So what was the world like in 1977? Well, let's take this week's trip together down memory lane. In 1977, Concorde makes his first commercial flight. Smokey and the Bandit is in the cinemas. And the horse Red Rum wins a record 3rd Grand National race. It was also the year when my uncle remarried. An unusual character who always put manure on his rhubarb. Strange fellow, I much prefer custard myself. So that was the world almost 50 years ago when this lens was new to buy in the shops. So what about today? Is this lens a good carry-around travel lens? It's certainly small and compact. How does it perform optically speaking? Well, let's find out together. As always, the stills and the video will be unedited, straight out of camera, so as not to disguise the character, strengths, and any weaknesses of this old classic. For this episode, I'll be using the Fuji X-T1 and the Sony A7R Mark III. So let's start with some images taken at Urquhart Castle on Loch Ness. I'm a fan of the way Minolta lenses reproduce colour, and this lens seems consistent with the other Minolta lenses I've used over the years. It's notable that Minolta was an early adoptee of advanced lens coatings, and the lenses have a nice way of rendering colour. As a side note, if you're visiting the area, Urquhart Castle is well worth a visit. It's a castle that has a fascinating history and an atmosphere about it, a place that really fires the imagination. But we have to move on. So setting off early next morning, I got off the beaten track and was able to try a little black and white photography with the lens at the water's edge of Loch Ness. It was amazing just how still the loch was at this time, only to see it become choppy later on in the day. Along the way I got the chance to test the lens a little more. With this image here shot at f2.8, you see how the contrast drops, which is quite expected. And the same scene here shot at f11, you see how the contrast increases along with depth of field. Let's look at another black and white that I took on the way back, as I came across a fellow traveller enjoying the calm, gentle sound of the river leading down to the loch. It was that sort of place, the sort of place that encourages quiet reflection. Now, let's head to Fort Augustus and the Caledonian Canal. But firstly, let's check out another of Thomas Telford's engineering prowess, in the form of Invermorrison Bridge. A bridge that was built in 1815 and was part of the main road between Drumnadrochit and Fort Augustus. So far the lens is doing well. It has good sharpness and is perfectly capable of producing nice landscape images, as can be seen in images taken from and of the old and new bridges at Invermoriston. So let's move on now to Fort Augustus and the Caledonian Canal. I took a series of images along the journey with the lenses by other manufacturers. Obviously for this video I'm just showing the images taken with the Minolta, but along the journey I used lenses from Konica, Canon and Pentax, shooting the same scene side by side with this lens. It was interesting to see the way lenses from different manufacturers gave a different feel to the images. Some lenses have a warmer colour palette than others. Some seem to boost the greens, others the reds or blues. The differences were subtle, but they are definitely there if you take the time and effort to look for them. So it's definitely worth trying out lenses from manufacturers that you're unfamiliar with. Of course, it's all a matter of personal taste. There's no right or wrong, no best as such. But finding the look that appeals to you is all part of what keeps using vintage lenses interesting. And it's worth the experimentation to find your own signature style. So before we head off further south, let's take the road to the Isle of Skye and then on to Skye itself. So now let's move on to the Isle of Skye and to the little fishing village of Elgol. And let's look at those Minolta colours. Minolta pioneered lens coating, calling the process achromatic coating. They use magnesium fluoride and other ingredients to give the lenses superior colour rendition and to help with light transmission. It also allowed Minolta to standardise the colour palette across its lens lineup, and they seem to achieve good consistency between lenses. The village of Elgol is perfect for trying out this lens, with its emerald greens and cobalt blues, and I feel the lens reproduces this beautifully, giving the colours a natural and yet vibrant look. And remember, all the video and stills are unedited, straight out of camera. Yes, Elgol is a place I'm determined to return to, but we have to move on with the journey. So now let's head further south and say our final goodbyes to the Isle of Skye. So now let's take a look at some images taken at Brewer Falls, an area immortalised by a poem written by Robert Burns. The famous poet visited the area in 1787 and was so impressed that he petitioned the 4th Duke of Atholl to plant trees in the area. The Duke took this to heart and not only planted trees but also constructed a path and viewing bridges. As a result, the area is easily accessible and heavily wooded, and is described as Perthshire's greatest walk. Before heading out to Scotland, let's stop briefly at Glen Coe. Although I visited the area on a very overcast day, it's an awe-inspiring place, with a sorrowful past, bearing in mind the infamous Glen Coe massacre of 1692. But it's with a heavy heart I have to say goodbye to Scotland and head down to South Wales. So the final leg of our journey starts at Brecon Canal in South Wales, and then out to Waterfall country in the Brecon Beacons National Park. This is an area of outstanding natural beauty and qualifies as a rainforest, a habitat that homes rare fauna and flora, and is home to wildlife such as otters. It's also full of waterfalls, abandoned silica mines and industrial ruins, an area that nature has reclaimed, and to do it justice needs a video all of its own. Something to look forward to in a future episode. So as we move on to the final video footage of Newton Beach on the South Wales coast, what's my conclusions about this Minolta MDW Roco 28mm f2.8 lens? Well, it's compact and relatively light without feeling cheap. and feels like a quality product. And at almost 50 years old, it's in perfect working order. My copy's in very good condition and cost me just £28. Bit of a bargain, as they normally go for more. But even if it cost me double the price, it would be well worth it. As it is a vintage lens, the value is likely to rise as time goes on, so it's a little bit of an investment. It's also a lens that exhibits good sharpness and has those beautiful Minolta colours. Is it perfect? Well, of course not. It will flare if you catch the light wrong, and it has only 6 non-rounded aperture blades that produce hexagonal bokeh. But that aside, it's been a great travel companion, and I would recommend you try out this little Minolta for yourself. So thank you for coming along this journey with me. Here's where I say my final goodbyes, from South Wales on the Glamorgan Heritage Coast, and finally from the Brecon Beacons National Park. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and ring that bell, and then who knows, maybe you'll see me out there in the real world, snapping away happily with a fist full of lenses. Until next time, bye for now.